Warning: this video is not suitable for all ages. Viewer discretion is advised.
This series discusses sexual abuse and trauma. Viewer discretion is advised.
It is important to realize that the reason we were more susceptible to be targeted by this woman was because of our unhealed childhood trauma, as it created vulnerabilities which were used against us. For Maka, her childhood trauma was never addressed by adults, which caused her to develop memory loss of the trauma and PTSD. Maka then later on realized after exiting the cult she indeed had trauma which adults around her oppressed and suppressed, leaving her unknowingly vulnerable both as a child and as an adolescent. For Trish, her trauma was also suppressed by the adults around her, which made her believe that it wasn't important, therefore leaving her unknowingly vulnerable to predators. The reason why we both did not realize it was a cult in the early stages was because of the way we were approached and how this woman painted the message to seem as if she was sent by God to help us.
Okay, guys, another example of how manipulative this woman is and how she blurs and incorporates herself in people's lives to the point where it's toxic and unhealthy and unnatural is she is sleeping with people that she mentors. At the same time, while going back and saying to her ex-husband and trying to figure stuff out between them as well.
This is not an easy thing for me to talk about because it doesn't feel like it's my story to share, so I'm only sharing it from the perspective of my experience. It's one of those things of my gift and me being dragged into situations that had nothing to do with me. Like there's a difference when someone comes to you and say, "Hey, I need your help." Because I remember when she came to me and said, she was telling me, "Oh, there's this kid in her church. Um, she told me this kid in her church, his name's Ebube, and she was trying to teach him the message that we were learning.
Mm.
But she would always tell me how kind and serving, like he likes to serve, how much of a gentleman, and how he was going through some things. And I was like, okay. But then over time, she was saying things that made me start to realize I think he had a crush on her because she mentioned this incident where she was coming out of the car and he put her heels on her feet. And I remember thinking, that's weird. Like, even I wouldn't do that. Like, I don't know if there's some people who do that, but for me, that was really weird. I was like, okay. And I was just like, don't you see there's a pattern here? And then she's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "He likes you." And she was like, "Oh no, 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 like no, everybody doesn't like me." And I was like, "No, he does. Like he has a crush on you." And then I started like playfully asking, I was like, "Do you?" And she's like, "Ah, no, no, I don't." But then later on, she came back to me and she was like, she's kind of toying with the idea. And I was just like, he's in his early 20s.
And she's
At the time I'm 30 years old. I'm 30 or turning 31. So I'm just like, to me, he's a child. Any person under the age of 24 is a child to me. And I'm 14 years younger than you. I
yeah.
wouldn't even like even playfully, like let's say if I was into like doing casual situations like with people, I have never been with somebody who's under the age of 24. Like in my entire dating history, like I've never even like considered it to be like, but the thing is it's not even about the age thing for me. It's more about what triggered me in that situation. I was like, I met you when I was around his age. And is it that the only thing that saves me is that she's not attracted to women? Because I remember she was telling me that one day she was having a fight with her husband,
Mm.
um, ex-husband or whatever they are. um, so she said she had a fight with him, and then she went to Ebube's house, and they started hooking up. Like they didn't like, and I was just like, he's like 22, you're in your
How
40s.
old is she, Trish?
She's, I can't remember, like she's now like, isn't she like late 40s now, 47 or something? Because your mom, how old is your mom?
Don't even know. I
She
genuinely,
should be turning 50 soon, isn't she?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, yeah, you like
She was in her
Antanas
40s,
who's
right?
like Antanas who's like 2 years younger than her, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Two or
Yeah.
three, I can't remember.
Yeah. So at the time I think she's like 45 or 46. And I'm like, Ebube a kid. And I remember she tried to justify it because whenever I would call her out on something, she was like, well, you would do it too. And I remember I stood my ground. I was like, this is not coming from a place of pride. And I tried to explain to her in a general way. And I was like, we live in a culture now, people are becoming aware of age gaps. What you're doing is wrong. It's not okay. And then she's like, well, he came to me. He's the one who wanted me. And because if you've seen how Ebube looks like, he looks like very muscular and big. And as I said, there are people who can have age gap situations. I'm not judging people, shaming people, but it's a tricky situation of why I think that also discouraged me from trusting her anymore.
Yeah, it's also because she was mentoring her guy. She was
Yeah,
claiming,
yeah,
she was preaching the same thing, the cult thing that about deliverance to him.
and she's sleeping with him. Um, and also the fact that he has a close relationship with her husband too. And I want to make it clear that me talking about this, I understand that, as I said, it's not my story to share. I'm only sharing my part. And I don't like it, he is a vulnerable. I know that we live in a culture where men are not seen as victims. It's always mostly women. I mean, hell, my mom was a predator, so I get it. Like in the sense, you wouldn't feel empathy for him because you're like he consented.
Mm,
But this is a power dynamic. We're trying to establish a pattern that Maka was 17, I was 21, and we were vulnerable. And
mhm,
Ebube currently, right now, is also a victim. And that's why
mhm,
even maybe it's almost like calling it out because I don't think he would ever have the courage to publicly, to even, not even publicly say, to even admit it to himself that he has been violated because consent, even if you say he's at the age of consent, consent is not real in that dynamic because all of us, our consent was revoked. It stopped being about God years ago and it became this thing that almost started to feel like it was like witchcraft. And I don't say this lightly. I'm not saying this to be malicious. I'm not saying this to I'm not saying this to harm or destroy anybody's life. That is not my intention. But what she's doing, we're forced to have to do this because there's no other way of stopping her. She's going to keep telling people as long as she thinks what she's doing is right.
mhm,
That poor boy has been harmed and his life has been blown up. Like she used to tell me that he feels guilty that sometimes he would cry because he slept with her and he knows what he's doing is wrong.
mhm,
And she's standing on a pulpit. Like, I'm not calling it out. And I also want to say, me and Maka, we're not perfect. We're not out here saying we're saints and we're naming and shaming these unholy people. No, but we're saying that if you're going to stand on a platform and call yourself a leader and say that I know what God told me, like, you will be held accountable. And at least in my case with Maka, we had each other. Abube doesn't have anybody. I
yeah,
like my heart feels so much sadness for him to be like, I'm not saying this to hurt you. Like Abube, if you see this, I am not saying this. I am sorry that someone else knows about your situation and they're publicly exposing it for the world to know. And maybe that's what you need in order to get your healing. I am sorry. I don't know if it makes sense. It feels like maybe that's what you need. You need someone to step into your situation and be like, what's happening to you is not okay. You did not consent to this.
Yeah.
You are no different to me and Mako, who Mako
Mm.
was violated by her grandfather. I was violated by my mom, and then violated again by this woman. You know, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I'm so sorry about this, and I'm so sorry about what has been happening to you because you don't deserve that. You don't
Yeah.
know me, but I've heard so much about the situation, and it's not okay.
No, it's
And
not.
if people don't aren't aware, she's gonna keep doing this. And God knows the stuff that we don't even know that she's been currently doing. Because me and Tamaka have not associated with this woman in like a year. Maybe she's recruiting people to replace us. It is not okay what she's doing. And even what happened to Ebube, it cemented to me because I remember processing it. I was like, Ebube is the same age I was when I met her. Like she started mentoring him the same way she mentored me, and then the relationship turned weird. And also, I want to say something, Maka, you don't know. Ebube comes from a very vulnerable family. He doesn't have a good relationship with his parents. Just like us, like he has issues, like he's vulnerable. He's an older sibling like us as well. So see, he is another person who's a victim who she is taken advantage of. And anybody who's questioning if we're coming for her, she always is surrounding herself with people younger than her and saying she's mentoring them. And nobody has ever questioned that. There's a culture in the church where they're predators going after young people, youth pastors, and it's being said, oh, they're helping them. And nobody questions the boundaries. Like now, ugh, I've said what I needed to say because I feel like, and I want to say, everybody, regardless of whatever consequences of this coming out, Jesus loves you, and don't let this, don't let this mistake that you made. It wasn't your fault. She's just really convincing. We all believed her and we all loved her. This is a
Mm.
very painful thing for us. I don't know, like I could say something else, you'd be like, nah, but
No,
like,
it's not for me. This thing was not. It was not for me. It was coming against me, stopping me from living my best life. So yeah, I'm gonna say the truth as it is. So I know how hard that was for you because I know you know how sensitive this situation is because of your past and how you didn't want him to feel like you're putting his thing on blast. But maybe this might be the reassurance he needs to leave. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
to any person that, please find God for yourself. And if you've found yourself doing things simply and you're questioning your reality by interacting with this woman, or if someone who has not interacted with this woman but is in a similar situation like me, Maka, or Ebube was in,
Mm.
just go and get help. Find counseling, find someone you can trust to share this. Get help. God loves you. It's never too late. It's only too late if you die. As long as we're breathing and are alive, Jesus loves you guys. That's the point of all of this. It's coming from a place of love, which is weird.
Yeah.
I know it might not feel like it, but it is.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'll stop recording.
The era after the cult.
Because even though I left earlier than her, I was kind of like still in it because I still had a relationship with my mother, and she was my mother's sister was using my relationship with my mom to like also control me, because my mom would have sessions with her on the phone where she told her that God was telling her this, that she should, and my mom was desperate because I guess she was like, I
And
need
also
someone.
to talk about
Wait, she couldn't.
uh,
Guys, this is why it's important that when you're in pain, you need to be able to sit with yourself because the reason why my mom kept going to her was because she was in pain and she couldn't sit in that pain by herself and process it. So she was like, you know what? My sister does it for me, so why should I? So I don't have to do it by myself, you know? So I was still indirectly connected to her. So that's why I would say I officially left, I guess, last year.
Both of us left last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
Um,
gonna say, you know how she left her job and then convinced everybody that we were on the same season because she always liked to attach her struggles or whatever onto the rest of us. So then
mhm.
she convinced your mom to leave her job as well and said, you're supposed to be in a season of rest. You're not supposed to be working. And I remember your mom fought it for a very long time and saying, I don't want to stop working.
Yeah. So now the way it's how the cult has affected us is that guys, we have this mind, we're fighting about isolating ourselves from people that we feel like we feel like she made us feel like we can't trust anyone who doesn't have.
And we showed up in all these weird ways because we didn't know how to. I say normal people, what I mean is people weren't exposed to the environment we're in. We didn't know how to relate to people. I don't know about you, Maka. I found
Mhm.
it weird to just engage in normal conversations that had nothing to do with God or even other Christians. I just became so weird. I look back and I'm like, who was that?
Yeah,
Who
we
the hell
it's
was
crazy.
that?
She isolated us from church. Now we don't know how to. Now when I go to church, I feel disconnected, even if it feels like it's the right one. It feels like it just doesn't feel
You don't
the.
even know how to worship. You don't know
Yeah,
how to pray. Like, I mean, obviously, you know how to because you still have a relationship with God, but the way church does things versus what we were taught, like, we were in this for 10 years. Like, we're only like almost coming to a year being free from this teaching, and it's.
entirety.
I even
I
reconnected to
also
some
gonna.
people. I was gonna say some of us have reconnected to some people like that used to know me prior to this group. And I
Mm,
remember a girl I used to be best friends with, she was like, Trish, you sound like yourself again. Like, who were you? Like, what happened to you?
mm. No, I look back and I was seeing how religious I was. That she made us think it wasn't okay, and I think I was even more isolated than everyone else because she started isolating me more in the group because I wasn't doing what she said. So even though I was in and out of the group, I was still isolated from people because now I because she was hurting me by isolating me from people I also loved in the group. That meant I was isolating myself from like people in general because I was like, I don't trust people if all they're gonna do is just do crap like that.
Uh, yeah.
That's what I'm still struggling with. What else? Just a lot of things. How she made us look at what it's like to serve God. How she was like, oh, you can't talk to God like this. You have to talk to God like that.
Yeah.
Um, just stuff like that.
Even like when it comes to our purpose, like I don't think you touched on that because I was struggling on for the longest time. I was really struggling on what to do with my life. And I would talk to her and I would pray about it. I mean, obviously, I would hear things, but hearing, as I said, it's a very tricky thing. I'm still learning about it, but I remember, was it 2 years ago? I had decided to go a different route,
Yeah.
and we went speaking for about 7 months because she said that I wasn't listening to her when it comes to teaching her teachings, and she said it was starting to impact her in a negative way. So she just stopped talking to me. So she came back and she was like, oh, like, no, it was, yeah, no, not last year, the year before. She was like, oh, you need to do the thing that you feel like God called you to do. And I was just like, I know I heard that, but I don't connect with it. And then she started grilling me saying, oh, you're going to like she impacted my purpose or career wise that I don't even know how to explain it. I don't know. It's just there was
Mhm.
just so much confusion in my life. Like, and it's so funny
And
that when she left, my all those answers started to become much clearer.
yeah, I do want to clarify. I do want to add something that she also taught us to reject self rejection. When I say that, I say it in the sense of shame and guilt that if we were not perfect, because the amount of time she was making us do the prayers, it gets you into that mentality that you have to be perfect in God's eyes for you to accept Him, that He has saved you, He has delivered you from this thing. So for me, I'm dealing with a lot of shame that she has put on us, that she made us feel every time she was correcting us and saying, "You're doing this wrong, you need to do this prayer like this, your heart was not in it, or you didn't use the correct words." She made us feel like we were inadequate to ask God for help.
Yeah. As you were talking right now, you know what came to me, because we're touching on the thing about mental health. Whenever some of us were struggling with like thing, because I was remembering it, the prayer as well was used as a technique to self-soothe, to regulate, because whenever you'd pray that prayer, that's why we said it's a placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
You'd feel the depression leave, like, oh, I was feeling super anxious when I prayed this prayer, it just went away. Like, so she'd be like, pray the prayer, you know the reason why you're being irritated or anxious or things are going wrong, because this prayer was all purposeful. It was used to cast out demons, it was used to self-regulate, it was used to connect to God. Like this prayer could work miracles. This man could do anything, man. It was
And
all.
do you
It was
see
like an
how, guys?
all-purpose cleaner. It did
Guys,
everything.
you see how that boxes guys and that boxes God. It literally
Like
removes
that
the
prayer
whole
was even
purpose of.
above God.
Yeah, it removes the whole purpose of having a relationship with God. Because for me, it's about authenticity. It's about coming, because in the Bible, we see plenty of times where people pray. There's prayers in song, there's prayers in poems. There's literally people writing poems about God and singing about God and just writing depressed letters to God too. So it didn't make sense for me that that one prayer was like one, it just was like I refused to think it was. Yeah, so that's pretty much what it is, guys. And something that we want guys to take away from it is that you need to understand that you need to develop your own relationship with God. And you need
Yes.
to understand God's character. Because if you understand Him, when someone comes to you claiming that they know this and this and this about God,
Mhm.
and this is what He's telling you, you'll be like, no. Because at the end of the day, you know what Jesus did at the end of each day? He came to God because He knew who the person who was going to keep him grounded was God. So if you are going to someone else to keep you grounded, you're doing this whole God thing wrong. Okay? God is meant to be your comfort, your everything. He's meant to be your moral compass. He's meant to be your comforting thing.
Mhm.
You can't go to someone. You will not find that in someone. If you do, you find yourself falling into a worse hole. You're now you're now putting people in the place of God, which is not good. And also,
I
guys, if you have trauma that you went through when you were young and God makes it known to you, please find help so that you won't be. Because for us,
we're
if
not talking about church unless
trauma,
if
wait,
yeah.
if me and Trish's trauma were sorted when we were young, we wouldn't have been as vulnerable as we were to how she was talking to us and how she was controlling us. We wouldn't have been as vulnerable to entering this cult.
Mhm.
Sorry, you were saying?
I was gonna say that it's also challenging this culture of mentorship, that even pastors, that you need to make sure that you're not so heavily dependent on someone, because number one, the Bible says you shall know them by their fruits, and even if they seemingly produce good fruit, you you cannot be closer to another human being more than God. Like I remember when me and Maka became friends, something that was so refreshing to me was she said we should not be trying to lead each other to ourselves, but our goal it should be to lead us to be closer to God and become the best versions of ourselves, because it starts to become this toxic thing. And that's what if you have a mentor, if you notice that you spend more time running to them for answers than running to God, like that person, think of them. Mentors should be like training wheels on a bike. But at some point, those training wheels have to be removed and you have to go on your own. If you're finding yourself depending and isolating yourself from your community, even the world, when Jesus prayed that prayer, I think, is it in John 17 or 16, where he says, I pray that you not take them out of the world, but I pray that you keep them from evil. So, which means that we have to learn to navigate this world coexisting with people who think differently from us, even people who are not Christians. So the goal of this podcast episode, it's not about exposing this person. We're just sharing our stories. But we had to learn the hard way to not seek answers that only God can give us, and only God could give us when we go to him directly. Like, I
Yeah.
have a history of struggling to connect with God by myself, but this situation, it forced me to learn how to connect with him by myself. I didn't
Yeah.
need a man of God. No man of God came into this situation and rescued us. We had to realize that God was not in this space and we had to seek him for ourselves. That's the point of this message. Seek God for yourself. Keep seeking him. If you're not finding him, keep seeking him. There's a word in there's a verse in the Bible, isn't it? It says, like, you will find him if you keep seeking him. You'll
Yeah,
find
you
him.
will. Another thing is, guys, it's a red flag if your mentor, if your mentor cannot get you away on your own riding a bike without training wheels. That means they've done a bad job. Okay? They know it too. Because even my counselor, I was talking about counseling, the goal for counseling is not to get someone to depend on the counselor, but it's to heal yourself so that you can go out in the world and face the world. You know?
I also want to say I'm so happy to have left. I still have trauma from my life being dictated and controlled the last 10 years, because I think the thing that makes me sad to think I was pursuing God, but I didn't realize I was actually pursuing a person. But like, now I feel like I've experienced God more differently, and I feel like my personality, I'm 32, guys, 32 years old. When I started this journey, I was 22 going through 23, and now it's almost like I have to make an effort to reconnect to who I was 10 years ago and figuring out what life would have been like if that version of me had grown up with that influence. But I can negate the fact that I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't have that experience. But I think that experience made me think that there was something wrong with that version. That's why I needed that prayer. That's why I needed Antanya Sue. And I'm now getting to that place, like, I never needed her. I went through all of that to actually realize, like, there was nothing wrong with me. I just went through a very traumatic childhood, and I didn't have healthy tools on how to self-regulate, how to process it, how to,
Yeah.
yeah.
If that comes to the point that I actually wanted to make, that the other message is, guys, I'll say this again. If you are someone who went through trauma, please, if you leave it, if you become aware of it and you leave it, you are literally leaving an open door for bad things like this to happen to you. That's why most people, when they have trauma, things keep on happening and adding on to it, and more trauma and more trauma. But if you deal with it, you wouldn't be getting in situations like this.
Yeah.
But don't ignore trauma, guys, because I think that's what this culture is doing, especially as a Zimbabwean, as Africans growing up, we're taught to ignore
And
trauma.
sweeping things under the rag, saying,
Yeah,
oh,
ignore
but it
it.
happened a long time ago, it's family. What do you mean? A child was violated and we're protecting the predator? I still
That's
can't get over that, man.
So don't, please, guys, if you take anything away from this, is that trauma is just means that we're not saying, oh, everyone who has trauma is horrible. We're just saying that you need to recognize that it leaves you vulnerable to certain attacks and certain things depending on your own trauma. Yeah, and that's it pretty much, guys. Thank you
Yeah.
for watching. We know this was a heavy
Heavy
deep dive,
episode.
but they were necessary.
Thank you for staying this long. If you've stayed this long watching us, because I'm assuming this is a very long ass episode.
Yeah, it needed
Yeah.
to happen.